All right, did he say that the disco party is at 6:30? Yeah, is that what he said? Wow, I'm really sad that I'm going to miss that one. Let me advance to my slides here. Oh, wait, let's go back. They put these slides on here. Let me show you. There's a disco party, 6:30. I've never heard disco party and 6:30 at the same time. All right, so let me get to the beginning here. Okay, there we go. All right, so thank you very much for having me. Yes, I was at the march on Saturday, and it was an incredible experience. The part that wasn't mentioned was that I actually went home on Sunday. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, I went home, and this is so I can get the Father of the Year trophy. I went home so I can play with my 3-year-old and then come back yesterday and to do laundry. Those are the reasons why I went on, because I was on the road for a couple of days. And the flight attendants on my flight yesterday from Phoenix to DC were the same flight attendants that I had flying on Sunday morning to Phoenix, and they looked confused, and I just told them that I left my favorite pen in the hotel room, and then I was going back to get it. They were very confused by that. So I want to introduce myself. I am Jaime Casap, or Jaime Casap, depending on what language you speak. I'm the education evangelist at Google. I've been at Google for 12 years. I was part of the team that launched Google Apps for Education, that we now call G Suite, into the university space. Arizona State University was the first university to launch it. I launched it with Adrian Sainer at ASU, launched Google Apps in the K-12, launched Chromebooks in education. So my team, I'm like the Yoda on the team. I'm there the longest of anyone else, and so I work across the different teams that are doing things in education and helping and thinking and coming up with new ideas and those types of things. So that's what I work at. That's what my work does at Google. I also travel around the world and get to talk to audiences like this and others about education, innovation, technology, everything from education conferences, to believe it or not, to real estate conferences, or keynoting the American Association of Accountants, right? The point is there's lots of people interested in what's going on in education, and I think we need to involve as many people as possible. So I get to travel around the world and do that, and I collect all my badges. It's my OCD. And so I'm excited to get my badge for today. I'll just add it on top of this one and take another picture. This thing is growing. Now, besides my role at Google, besides the work that I do with the education team, I'm also part of my community. And as part of my community and as part of what I do in the education space, I sit on the board of an organization called inquiryschools.org. And what we do is we focus on bringing these ideas, project-based management, inquiry-driven education into the K-12 system. And as part of that, one of the things that I help launch in Phoenix, Arizona is a school called the Phoenix Coding Academy. And this is a school that's part of the Phoenix Union School District. It's not a private school, not a charter school, a regular high school, where we took computer science and we embedded into all the subjects that kids are learning in the school. So it's not a computer science track, it's computer science and history, and computer science and biology, and computer science and art, and it's all cross-disciplinary. And this is the school where we're launching this. And it's a new kind of school. The reaction's been great. We're 2 years in. We have freshmen and sophomores in the school. The kids are great. The kids are awesome. The work is great, and we're trying to figure it out as we go. The teachers are fantastic at our school. So besides my role in the nonprofit world and helping build schools, I also teach 10th grade communication skills, or I should say I teach 10th graders communication skills. And when I talk to folks about teaching, I go in about every 3 or 4 weeks. It's the hardest thing that I do. It's on my calendar like next week, and I start thinking about it 6 days before, and I start prepping for it the weekend before, and I go in, I teach 90 kids, 3 classes all day. I'm done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's like a bus hit me, right? It's the most exhausting day you could have. And when I talk to people about teaching, and I recommend to folks to go into the classroom and teach, bring your expertise into the classroom. When I go in and teach, when I tell people about teaching, I tell them that it's a lot like golf. In that, for those of you who golf will understand this, you could have a terrible day golfing. You could hit parked cars, you could break windows, you can kill birds, terrible day. You're like, I am never playing this game again. This is the last time I'm playing this game. And then that last shot you take, just real smooth off the club head, lands on the green, you go up and putt it for like a par, and you're like, I love this game. I'm coming back again tomorrow. That's what teaching is like to me, where you could feel like you're having a terrible day, where nothing's going right, and you might think that kids aren't listening or nothing's getting through, and then you go home at the end of the day and you see a tweet like this from a parent, and you're like, yes, I'm going back tomorrow, right? Where you don't even know the impact that you're having on kids. I had to figure out who JJ was, because I had no idea, right? That's the impact that we have in education. So for me, I think education is the most critical thing that we can focus on. I believe education disrupts poverty. I believe education changes families' destinies. I believe that education is what we use to progress forward. And for me, it's a personal passion, because I'm one of those kids that we often talk about when we talk about who needs education the most. I am a first-generation American, born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Any New Yorkers in the room? Yeah, it's been a while, because you're usually louder and more annoying than that. Yeah. Let me hear yeah, anyone from New York? Yeah, there you go, that's much better. But I'm talking about the Hell's Kitchen from the 60s and 70s and 80s, not the one that you find today with the $21 tacos. I'm talking about the Hell's Kitchen where it wasn't a great place to live, wasn't a great community. My mother came to America from Argentina, and I was born and raised by a single mother on welfare and food stamps in Hell's Kitchen. And wasn't a great place to be. Again, New York wasn't the best place. This was what my park looked like in Hell's Kitchen. I saw lots of terrible things growing up there, and I wanted out. And what I saw as the common denominator of people who were successful was education. So, graduated from high school, went to college, went to graduate school, and I get to stand here in front of you, and I've had an amazing life. I've done amazing things, including being able to bring my 16-year-old, because the reason I went to the march was to bring my 16-year-old to the march so that he can experience it and see what leadership looks like, and then flew his butt back home. I get to do things like that because of education. Now, I've had some amazing experiences in my career. One of them stands out more than all the others. It was when the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, asked me to come speak at the White House to about 200 kids as part of her Reach Higher initiative. Remember that initiative where we were focused on getting kids to think beyond high school? So it was 200 kids that were growing up the way I grew up, to talk to them, to show them that someone like me who was like them can do what I do, that they can do it too. And to talk to them about not just graduating high school, right? To set their expectation that they should be thinking about higher education, whether that's a college degree, a certificate program, but thinking beyond high school. So she invited me to come speak to the 200 kids and the organizations that support those kids, and I said, let me check my calendar. No! You go. And when you go to the White House, this is what it looks like when you speak in the East Room of the White House. Doesn't this look like one of those pictures you get at the state fair where they green screen you in? Well, when my friends saw this picture, because I posted this immediately, when my friends saw this picture, they were not impressed that I spoke at the White House. That's what your friends are supposed to be like. The comments I got, what they were impressed about was that I owned a suit. That's what they were. They didn't realize I owned one, and what they don't know is that it's one. I have one suit. That's it right there. Now, I show you this picture because that's the American ethos that we all strive for, right? That if you work hard, you get your education. You know, anyone in this country can accomplish anything. That you can stand in front of the president and the first lady and all those cameras in the back, no matter where you come from, no matter what zip code you're in. That's the idea that we have. That's what we all strive for. That's what I hope we gather at events like this to talk about. How do we do that better? But here's the thing we don't think about. That the impact that we have on students goes on for generations and generations and generations. That if you're in the classroom, if you teach teachers, if you are teaching in the classroom, if you're teaching in K-12, if you're teaching at the higher education level, no matter where you are, that the impact that you have on students goes on and on and on for generations. That you have an impact on kids, whether you teach for 2 years or 40 years, that you will never meet in your whole life. Because now I have my kids. This is them. I have a 25-year-old a 16-year-old, and a 3-year-old. That's right. Some of you just realized I can only handle one child at a time. I like it that way. But my 25-year-old is actually living in House Kitchen, New York, lives about a block from where I grew up, and is working at CNN doing exactly what she wants to be doing in her life, like loves her life, loves the work that she's doing, and she graduated from college 3 years ago with a video production degree, exactly what she wants to be doing, and we never talked about whether she was going to go to college or not. She just assumed she was going to college, because I went to college, her mother went to college, people in her life went to college. She actually assumed she was going to graduate school because her mother's a teacher and she went to graduate school and I went to graduate school. She assumed I was going to pay for that, but we took care of that problem pretty quickly. My 16-year-old, this just on Sunday, we're continuing our conversations about what his higher education experience is going to look like. The idea that he's going to go and not go to college doesn't even cross his mind. He just assumed he's going. That's the impact that we have with our students, that they go on, that they don't know that it was my 4th grade teacher, my 9th grade teacher, my college freshman teacher, and all the other teachers in my life, that's the reason why they get to do what they do in their life. Because at the end of the day, what our job is to do is to prepare kids like this for the future. Now, the thing that we have to recognize is that the future's already here right now. Now, I'm not one of those education reformers. I'm not one of those guys who will stand up here and tell you that education is broken and that it needs to be fixed and teachers are terrible. I can't be one of those people. It worked for me. And it worked for thousands of people every year that come up to me and say, I grew up just like you did. There's people in this room who grew up just like I grew up, and they'll come up to me and say, education worked for me too. Has it worked for everyone? Absolutely not. Can we do better? Yes, but the idea that it's broken doesn't make sense. We built a superpower of a nation on the back of the education system in this country. What we do need to consider, though, is that the world is changing. And that what we need to do in education is understand and realize that we no longer are preparing kids for jobs that look like this. We are no longer preparing kids for jobs that look like this. That we now live in a completely new economy. We live in an economy that's about digitalization. And when I mean digitalization, I mean everything that has to do with technology. Whether it's cloud computing, technology, computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, VR, anything that you think about when you think about the use of technology. And by the way, across all industries, across everything that we do, that's what I mean in terms of the economy that we face today. It's about digitalization. And these are the types of jobs that we are preparing our kids for. And the language of that is computer science. I heard mentioned that there's a computational thinking class, and I think that's a great class because the language of digitalization is computer science. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a computer scientist, but you need to understand the language. Just like you need to understand English, doesn't mean that you're going to be an author and write fiction books for the rest of your life. You need to understand the language. The language is computer science because we're seeing the impact of digitalization in everything that we do. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts there will be 1 million computer science jobs available in the next 8 to 10 years, and that's just computer science jobs. That doesn't include all the other jobs associated to computer science or the idea of digitalization. Google is a regular company with HR people and marketing and finance, and if they don't know anything about digitalization, if they don't know the language of our business, they really can't work with us. It's understanding the language of digitalization, and that's why we're seeing an impact across the board. Computer science is something that is relevant to everyone. So for example, the average computer science graduate here in DC, I'm not picking on DC, we just happen to be in DC, and actually these numbers are better than other states, but the average computer science graduate in DC makes $108,000 a year. Compared to the average computer science, the average person in DC that makes $82,000 a year. By the way, it's a big number compared to other places. And right now, not 10 years from now, not 20 years from now, right now there are 11,030 open computer science jobs available in DC. 11,000 jobs available in DC. That's 4.4 times the average demand of other industries. And in 2015, only 133 people in DC graduated with a computer science degree, and 41% were female. And that's the highest number I've seen in any state. In 2015, only 233 students took the AP Computer Science exam, and 31% of those were female. And that's because only 15 schools in DC offer the AP Computer Science course, and that's 29% of the schools that offer AP programs. There's nothing wrong with AP History. But if my dream job is to teach AP History and be a basketball coach, that's what I want to do with my life. But we need to understand that we now live in a different world, and we have to think about what digitalization means across the board, because the role of digitalization has been here forever. This is not a new concept. Later this afternoon, I'm going to get on the plane, and I'm going to pretend like I put my phone in airplane mode, like all of you do. But we've been putting computers on airplanes for a long time. This is a hard drive that's being loaded onto an airplane in 1956. Now, if you were a business in 1956, you could lease this machine to do computational work, to do storage, to do data things. You could lease this for about $3,200 a month in 1956 dollars, which is about $30,000 a month now. And it's a 5 megabyte hard drive. What's 5 megabytes worth today? The same is true in education. We've been dealing with digitalization and technology in education for a long time. Motion pictures were going to revolutionize education in the 1900s. Television was going to do it in the 1950s, and we've been talking about computers in education since the 60s. I took a computer class when I was in 9th grade, which was like 100 years ago. I was told that computers were going to be important in my future, so I took a computer class, and I learned how to program in BASIC. And maybe some of the old people like me in the room will remember this program, because it was a national program. I learned how to program in BASIC, and I wrote 5,000 lines of code to make a bird fly across the screen on a Commodore 64. You guys remember that? For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it wasn't a bird. It was literally a dash line that just went up and down like this. And I'm like, this is why computers are going to be important? So we've been talking about computers for a long time. What's different? Why do we feel more pressure? Why are we talking more about the role that technology has in education across the board? A couple of things I think are going on. First, we know, especially in this room, I was so excited to talk to you guys. We know what good education is. We know that it has to be relevant and engaging. We know it has to be personal. We know we can do amazing things with great education ideas. We just haven't been able to implement a lot of these ideas because the models don't work. You can't do personalized learning, and I don't mean personalized learning, I mean personal learning. You can't do personal learning when you have a 1:30 ratio in a classroom and you're using textbooks. Technology can actually help us implement some of these great ideas. We can take some of the best research that you guys have produced and ask yourself, how do I bring these ideas to life using technology? What technology doesn't exist that we can use to bring these ideas to life? I know that's what we're doing in this room, but that's what we need to do across all of education. How do we take the best ideas and then think about how to implement these ideas enabled and supported by technology? So that's the first thing that's going on, and you're starting to see an impact of that. Second, unlike when I took that computer class, technology is wrapped around everything that we do, and we don't even recognize it anymore. For example, how many of you have not used technology today? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. How many of you have not used the web today? So my favorite answer so far is somebody shouted out, not me. And I asked, well, really? And she's like, I just checked my email, but that's it. How long did it take us to get to this point? Anyone have an Apple 10 or whatever, X, whatever it's called? That's 10 years old. The iPhone is 10 years old. The BlackBerry, you have a BlackBerry, there's usually a couple BlackBerry users. They're very passionate about their BlackBerry. They're very like, you're going to pray this thing out of my cold, dead hands passionate about their BlackBerry. And that's 13 years old. This technology they can't live without. Do you remember that we used to have to call the internet with our home phones? And the internet would be busy. And you were okay with this. You were, I tried to call the internet today, it was busy. I'll try again tomorrow. Like it was okay. And what was your reward when you got online? It was a bunch of pages with words to links. With links. That was the big innovation. With links to other pages that had words. And you'd go down these rabbit hole of text. And you were excited by this. And every once in a while, someone would post a picture and you lose your mind. You're like, everyone, come on, gather. There's going to be a picture of my computer screen. And that line on the bottom would just go back and forth like this. All right, come back in half an hour. There'll be a picture of my computer screen. And what's your expectation today? I get frustrated. My goal for 2018 was to try, and I'm failing miserably, try not to use the Wi-Fi on airplanes because I get too frustrated that the Wi-Fi is too slow while I'm traveling through space. Our expectations of technology have changed. It's wrapped around the core of everything that we do. And if that's true for us, for most of us in this room who are minding our own business when this thing called the internet showed up, what do you think that means for a generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before Google? A generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before tablets and smartphones and laptops. A generation of kids who don't know that the world used to exist without Wi-Fi. Tell a 10-year-old kid that you're going to go stay at a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and they're like, what? We're going to cave? We're going camping? Where are we going? This is the first true digital generation. Now, I'm not saying that they're different than we are. I'm not saying that I'd be careful of anyone who would stand up here and say, this generation is born with technology. They just naturally know how to use these tools. That they can multitask and do, no, they can't. They do two things at the same time poorly, just like we do two things at the same time poorly. But how they think about learning is different. And it's only different because they're learning in a different world than the one we learned in, period. This is a picture of my 16-year-old when he was about 13. And he comes into my office, huffing and puffing, because he's got a bug in his line of code. Can't fix it. He's been working on it 2 hours. He breaks down and wants my help to help him fix this bug. I had no idea he was learning how to code. No concept, no idea. He never came to me and said, hey, where can I learn how to code? What program can I take? What classroom can I go and learn how to code? What teacher can teach me how to code? He just started learning how to code. Him and his friends were running some servers, some gambling sites on Minecraft. I expected the FBI to break down my door, but he was learning how to code. And think about this, I work at Google, and he didn't ask me where he should learn how to code or what he should learn how to code. He just started learning how to code. This generation has everything at their fingertips. They're just used to looking things up and finding things. This is the way they work. How do we take advantage of that? How do we make sure that they're building the right skills that they need, that what they're getting isn't fake, that what they're looking at has been vetted? Those are the points that we need to focus on with this generation. Now, this generation is different. We often say that about previous generations, but this is truly the first digital generation. Those of us who are parents in this generation have never experienced what they're experiencing. Think about a couple of things. Number one, I call them the Great Recession generation. Now, when I talk about Generation Z, I'm talking about those that are about 16 years old, right? Those that are born a year or a year in or a year after the year 2000. We are just starting to see the economy pick up. They have 15, 16 years of a bad economy, budgets being crushed, state budgets, federal budgets, deficits, all these talks about jobs. 60% of them are worried about what work will look like for them. We grew up with this idea that if you work hard and you're loyal and dedicated, you show up first to work, you leave last, and you put your time in, you move from analyst to consultant to manager to VP to senior VP. That was a contract that we grew up with, and yet this generation has seen that contract broken. They watched their parents lose their jobs. They watched their siblings go to college and then come home and live in their rooms again because they couldn't find work. It's no wonder that 70% of them want to work for themselves. They don't want to work for you at all. And they have the technology to do that. If you think about this generation and what they care about, it isn't the same thing. Even if they do work for you, a majority of them want to work in meaningful work, and they want to have an impact on the world. So one, they're the Great Recession generation. I also call them, like I mentioned, the 9/11 generation. This is a generation that doesn't know what the world looked like before 9/11. A generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before global terrorism, domestic terrorism. Remember when we used to go to the airport and go to the security, my flight's leaving in 10 minutes, I don't have time to go to security. And all right, go ahead. They have no idea what that is like, or what the airport used to be like. They are also the climate change generation. They've heard about the world being destroyed their whole life. 90% of them believe that global warming is caused by humans. And 2/3 of those have no idea, no concept, no understanding why that's not our number one priority. How is global climate change not the number one priority for everyone? They can't understand that. This is the world that they're growing up into. But here's the good news. They care about education. They believe in education. 80% of them believe that higher education is important to them. It's meaningful and part of what they're going to look like in terms of success. Now, 80% of them also believe the cost of higher education is too high, and 2/3 of those believe that it's worth it. So they believe in higher education, they think it's too much, and so that means the reaction to that, the consequence of that is they want a couple of things changed. For example, and I talk to universities about this all the time, you going to students to this generation and pitching them the student union or your sports team might not resonate with them. They want the experiences, they want the courses, they want the professors, they want the work, but they don't necessarily need a really good gym or a sports program or what the union looks like. They want to change how that education is delivered to them, and partly because of the experiences that they're having in K-12 about what education looks like as well. Walking into a hall with 500 other kids listening to a professor isn't going to work for this generation. They're growing up in a different world. They want experiences. I don't know about you, but I remember I was like a junior or senior before the college trusted me enough to go into the community and be an intern somewhere. They don't understand why they can't be interns as soon as they get there. Why can't internships and work experience be part of what they do in their college experience? 80% of them want to do that work experience, that internship. But they're also interested in what the outcomes of these schools are. Again, our generation, we grew up with this idea that all you needed to do was go to college and get that piece of paper, get that degree. How many people do you know that are working in fields that have nothing to do with their degrees? All you had to do was oh, look, you have a piece of paper. You're smart. Come on in. This generation saw that that didn't work and that just having a piece of paper isn't good enough. They need the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities, and therefore 82% of them check your schools to see what your outcomes are. Check to see employment data, check to see placement, check to see on LinkedIn how many people graduated from your university and what are they doing today. So how do we present information to them that makes sense? Now, The reason why they're so uptight about all this is because think about the world that they're facing. We already talked about what we're not preparing our kids for, so let's talk about what we are preparing them for. We're preparing them for jobs where people don't do any work, where machines are doing a lot of the work. And even if they can find human jobs, there's a good chance that those jobs are going to be done by things that look like this. In my weird head, I spend most of my time walking around the world, looking at people's work, looking at their jobs, thinking, is this a robot's job or is this a human's job? And how much longer? I predict like how much longer would that person be doing a job like that? And even if they can find a job that people do, there's a good chance that those are going to be impacted in one way or the other. Someone drove me to the airport, then someone drove me on an airplane, and then someone drove me to the hotel. 4.5 million people make a living in this country driving something. Driving supplies, driving people, driving everything. And you can buy a self-driving car right now. There's a representative in Arizona that drives 19 miles back and forth to work every day, and he gets in his Tesla, sets it on auto, and then reads the newspaper in the front seat. I'm not supposed to be doing that, but that's what he does. What's this technology going to look like in 10 years? We even had an incident with a self-driving car, and I knew Uber got in trouble in Tempe, Arizona, but if you actually look at the footage, not one of you wouldn't have hit that person. Car was driving down 35 miles an hour, and a person just jumped out, and now all of a sudden it's the car's fault. In the dark, by the way. I'm not defending Uber at all, but I'm just saying that we got to look at this at the big picture and how this technology is moving forward. But here's the thing we also have to consider. I'm not saying that jobs are going away. What I'm saying is that jobs are changing, or parts of our jobs are going to change, and we're seeing this in real time. Here's the thing we have to consider. Jobs are changing doesn't necessarily mean jobs are going away. So for example, when was the last time one of you walked into a bank, filled out one of those little pieces of paper with that pen that's doing a life sentence, right? And you got online through the rope line, and you went to the front and you said, I would like $20 in cash, please. They would look at you for a minute like, I'm sorry, is this a bank robbery? I don't know what's going on right now. When was the last time you did that? Most of us, if we have cash at all, and there's a percentage of you guys in this room right now who have no cash in your pocket at all, and not just because you're broke, you just don't need it. If you get cash at all, you go to an ATM machine, right? You don't even think about that. That's what you use to get cash. But here's the thing to consider. There are more bank tellers working in banks today than there were when ATMs were introduced in the 90s. They're just doing a different job. They're providing a higher level service. They're not doing the process work anymore. We're seeing this in real time across lots of industries. You recognize this picture. This is a picture of a supermarket during one of the busiest times of the day. And you're seeing this in real time, right? You walk into a supermarket, you see 10 people doing cashier lines, you have the 15 items or less, and you're counting all the items in your cart, putting back some yogurt because you want to get on that line. You see the people doing what? Process work. They're taking your cans, scanning them, and putting them in a bag, and then watching you use the keypad. This job is so easy, you can do it. Without any direction, without any professional development, you walk into a supermarket now, and what do you find? Self-service checkout lines. You do it. You can do this work. Where's this moving to? You're seeing Amazon in their store in Seattle where you don't even need to check out things at all. You just take things off the shelf, put them in your bag, and walk out of the store. Does this mean cashier jobs and supermarket jobs are going away? Yes and no. It means that cashier roles are going away, but it doesn't necessarily mean that supermarket jobs are going away. Because when you walk into a supermarket that looks like this, can you find anyone to help you find anything in a store? Ever? There's no one that can help you because they're too busy doing this. My wife, I know she puts, this is my conspiracy theory, I think she puts things on my list that she knows I'm not going to be able to find just to keep me out of the house longer. Imagine instead of having cashiers and checkout people and people bagging your stuff, imagine instead, obviously you're not going to have 20 people, but you might have 5 people. Numbers are going to decrease, but now you have people roaming the aisles, and they're there to help you find things. But they're not cashiers, they're dietitians, they're nutritionists, they're food experts, they're cooks. What are you cooking tonight? Let me show you this ingredient. You should use this instead. Let's walk over to my demo station. I'll show you how to make that. An experience, a higher level service. Jobs are changing in that way. And this is across the board. All jobs are being impacted. No job is safe. And we know this. I remember 25 years ago, the first time I walked into my first job and I saw a calculator on my desk, I was using an automation tool. When I started using a word processor, I was using an automation tool. We do this across the board. Some jobs are impacted more than others, but across the board, jobs are being impacted. Whether they're low-level jobs or low-skilled jobs or high-skilled jobs, there's some degree of impact. So what does that mean? That means we need to consider the skills that this generation needs. Now, I'm going to show you a slide. I worked with the Economist Group a couple years ago, and we asked employers all over the world, what are the most important skills your employees need to have? And I'm going to show you the results of that survey. But I have to warn you, the slide I'm about to show you isn't fascinating at all. It's the same list that we've been looking at forever. There's no one in this room, especially in this room, who doesn't know this list. Problem solving, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, blah, blah, blah. We know this list. We know this list, and we've been talking about this list for so long, we call them 21st century skills. We are 18 years into the 21st century. My 3-year-old will be around in the 22nd century. God willing. When are we going to start calling them 22nd century skills? I coined that. Don't take it from me. We've been talking about this list for so long that we don't even think about what it is that we should be doing with this list, or what is it that we should be focused on with this list. And I want to give you a couple of examples of that. For example, we're still asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? There's not a person in this room that's not guilty of asking a kid in the last 10 years, what do you want to be when you grow up? I talk to students all the time, and from 5th grade on, there's not a student that I've ever met in my life who has not been asked that question at least sometimes once a week. What do you want to be when you grow up? That question needs to stop. That question makes no sense. That question used to make sense in the old world that we're from. It doesn't make sense in the new world that they're from. When I was a kid, you can ask me that question because, there were like 100 jobs. There were stable jobs. We know right now that the jobs of the future don't exist today. 60% of the jobs don't exist. Jobs are changing every day. Automation technology and digitalization is impacting all jobs, shifting all jobs on a continuous basis. I'm working in a job and for a company that didn't exist 20 years ago and couldn't exist 30 years ago. What role, what business, what industry doesn't exist today or can't exist today that's going to exist in 20 years? That question makes no sense. No wonder kids can't answer it. Instead, what we should be asking kids and students is, what problem do you want to solve? What's the problem that spins in your head? Because the problem doesn't matter. The problem is going to change over time. But the process of problem solving never goes away. Because the more important question when you ask a student what problem you want to solve is the second question, which is, what do you need to learn to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that you need to solve that problem? How can you start building those knowledge, skills, and abilities? They have the world at their fingertips. What classes could you be taking at our university, at other universities, at what school? Who could be teaching these? Who could be a mentor to you? Who's out there solving this problem now, and how can you start working with them? My favorite emails are usually from students who say, "Hey, I've been following you. I know who you are. I got something I want to talk to you about. There's a problem I want to solve in education. I'd love your feedback." The kids, I tweeted out a couple weeks ago when the whole thing happened in Florida and the kids in Florida were being activists. And I tweeted out, the most surprising thing about the kids becoming activists in Florida is that adults are surprised that kids are being activists in Florida. After we just learned about what this generation has gone through, absolutely they're activists. And right now they're focused on gun legislation. When they solve that, then what are they going to do? What are they going to turn their attention to? This is the generation of problem solvers. How do we help them build those skills? Because when you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up, you're really asking them, who do you want to work for? And number one, the jobs don't exist. Number two, 70% of Americans are disengaged with the work that they do. And sometimes we forget that in education because education is a very purposeful driven industry. And we forget that 70% of Americans are disengaged in what they do. They find no meaning in what they do. Do you think kids want to do that? When you ask a kid what problem you want to solve, you get closer to what Daniel Pink talks about in his book Drive, if you haven't read it, about what motivates all of us as human beings. Three things, the same three things, right? Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. What problem do you want to solve? How do you want to solve it? What do you need to learn to solve that problem? So that's one. Two, we talk about critical thinking, but how do we do critical thinking in education? I believe we can't do critical thinking in education if we have endpoints for our students. Here's your B, here's your C, here's your A. What's the C in journalism? You got 70% of the facts right. Congratulations, you passed. We live in a world of constant and consistent iteration. The new digitalization economy is about constant and consistent iteration. How do we build iteration into our school models so that we can take advantage of that? There is no more new and improved tide. We just expect it to be new and improved. If you used Google last night and used it again today, you probably use a different version of Google because we update it 600 times a year. The Chromebook team launches a new operating system every 6 weeks, not every 6 years, and they want to get it down to every 2 weeks. Constant and consistent iteration, and our models are set up as our models are set up as giving kids our endpoints. You finished this assignment, you finished this course, you finished this, you graduated. We don't live in that world anymore. I remember when I graduated from graduate school, I remember saying, I am done learning. I never have to learn again. Because that's what was put in my head. I'm done. There's my piece of paper. Is that true today? Nothing is further from the truth than that. So how do we build iteration into our projects so kids are building things and doing things on a consistent basis? With that comes collaboration. And we talk about collaboration in education, but we don't mean it. Because the model, again, served us really well for a very long time, is set up as a single-player sport. The problem is that we live in a team-based world now. It's my 16-year-old who's responsible for his tests, his grades, his assignments, and then he's supposed to go work with others. Imagine, take a typical 9th grade test or a typical freshman test, right? Not a quiz. I'm a big fan of quizzes, but we know, everyone in this room knows that if you memorize 3 chapters worth of work to take a chapter test, you know 3 months from now, those kids aren't going to remember what they studied. You know that. We all know that. So let's take one of those tests. And at the end of the test, 2 kids from the back of the classroom come up to the teacher or the professor and say, well, we were sitting back there, and I realized that there were some answers that she knew, and there were some answers I knew, so we combined our skill set and worked on this together. What would your reaction be? Why are we teaching 16-year-olds that collaborating is cheating? Flip that into my world. Flip it into your world. I go to Sundar, the CEO at Google, and I say, here's the education plan for 2019. I did it all by myself. I'm sorry, what, you're asking me, did I work with anybody on this? No, I swear I didn't work with anybody on this. Does my team know about it? No, of course they don't know about it. I wouldn't let them look at this. How long would I have my job for? How do we build real collaboration into our models? Real collaboration, the ability to listen, the ability to ask questions, the ability to change your mind based on evidence that you're presented, the ability to build consensus and influence. One of the things that we're looking for at Google, and somebody asked me at the table, what are the things that you look for at Google? One of those things is called leadership. And do you think by leadership we mean, can you tell people what to do and they'll just follow you out of fear? No. We're asking, can you influence? Can you build consensus? Can you collaborate? Can you take a step back and let someone else lead? How do we build real collaborative models into our school system? That's what we're trying to do in my organization at Inquiry Schools, where we do this, right? It's not about group work. It's not assigning 5 kids one paper that they need to write, knowing that one kid's going to write it and the other 4 are going to skate by or pay the guy off to write it. Real collaboration, real work that kids are working on together. So what I think we need isn't so much of any kind of new system. We don't need to break down education. We just need a culture shift. We need to understand that we are now preparing kids for a different future, and that we need to adjust according to that future. That we no longer are about putting information in kids' heads because information is a commodity. It has no value. What is valuable is what we do with that information. How do we convert the information that we have at our fingertips into valuable knowledge, into unique knowledge, into original thoughts? A couple weeks ago was President's Day, a month ago. And one of my favorite stats from President's Day is that 7% of Americans can name you the first 4 presidents of the United States. One of those Huffington Post articles. Ooh, the vibe in the room just changed, right here. I just felt an air vibe. Because I have a microphone. And I can point to one of you and ask you to name me the first 4 presidents. And if you don't know, everyone all of a sudden just look down. If you don't know, you're going to be embarrassed. And people at the conference are going to make fun of you. Look, there's a person who didn't know the first 4 presidents. Even though they didn't know who the first 4 presidents are. Sound familiar? Or I can give everyone in this room 30 seconds, and all of you can tell me who the first 4 presidents are. Information is a commodity, it has no value. What is valuable is what we can do with the information that's available to us. So in my class, I don't ask my kids to name me the first 4 presidents. In my class, I ask my kids to tell me the 3 things the first 4 presidents agreed on. What are the 3 things they disagreed on? Who won those arguments, and how did that shape our country? Try to look that up. How do we help our kids build original thought based on the information that's at their fingertips, instead of pretending that the information isn't there? We're starting to move away from a model, again, that served us really, really well. We built a superpower of a nation on the back of the education system in this country. Everything from the first classrooms we built in Massachusetts, and I'm a huge study of education in this country from its beginning all the way through the GI Bill and everything that we built. One of the first nations in the world to ever look at education in a serious way as part of democracy. How do we move from a model that we know served us well but no longer is adequate for the economy that we face and that we know might not work so well, and move into a model where we know what works, where kids are making things and building things and working together, and they're collaborating and they're iterating and they're doing the things that make sense to them because they're interested in it. Where we're not even talking about personalized learning, which is still content that I have that I want you to learn, so I broke it down for you in a certain way, but personal learning, where kids are driving their learning based on their cultural relevance, based on the things that they're interested in. And the argument I hear all the time against that is, no, but everybody needs to know the same stuff. And then I remind them of Thanksgiving and what I learned about Thanksgiving, which was a bunch of really cool Indians and a bunch of really cool pilgrims got together and had a big dinner. Is that what Thanksgiving was about? Let's get them interested in the things they're interested in, and let's help them drive that interest into what education looks like. I'll give you a Google example of what this looks like, this constant, consistent iteration that we need. This is the original Google.com. No, this is it. This is what it looked like. This is Larry and Sergey putting a bunch of computers together. And the two innovations, one was distributive computing, and two, the PageRank, how they did search. And then this is what Google looks like today. This is a row of servers from data centers that we have all over the world, thousands and thousands of rows of servers like this. And I want to point out three things. Number one, this can happen anywhere today. You don't need to be in Palo Alto. You don't need to be in Silicon Valley. Computer science is across the board. Any two kids in any one of our communities, wherever you live, have 1,000 times the computing power that Larry and Sergey had when they launched Google. Today, connect to the cloud, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, you can compute anything. So that's one, and that's exciting because it can happen anywhere in our community. It's also scary because it can also happen in India or China or other places. Where is innovation going to come from? So that's one. Two, this is not what Google looked like on a Monday, and then this is what it looked like on Thursday. This took 19 years. 19 years of problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, all the things that we talk about. 19 years of this. Constant, consistent. And the third thing is that this is not what a data center is going to look like 19 years from today. There is no future data center. One of the questions I get from reporters all the time is, tell me what the future classroom looks like. They hate my answer because the answer is there is no future classroom. The future classroom is on Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, and it's constant and consistent iteration. I don't know what we're building towards, we just have to start. Because just like the data center, the next level of data center is the next wire, the next casing, the next light bulb, the next cooling system, the next software update, and so on and so on. It's just constant and consistent. There is no endpoint anymore. The good news is that we are just getting started. This is the most exciting time in education because we are just at the very beginning of this. In 1994 or 1995, 1% of the world was online. 1%. 1995 wasn't, please tell me that 1995 was not that long ago. 1% of the world was online. Today, first of all, you ask a kid this question, they'll always say like 100%. Today, about 50% of the world is online. And what I mean, 50% online, that definition changes depending on how you measure that. Having a cell phone that's on for 3 hours might be counted as online. But really online, like 20, 25%, maybe that many, that kind of internet access that we have. We're at the very beginning of this. We're just getting started. Think about half the world doesn't have access to the information yet, or the internet. Imagine what that's going to do. It took electricity 50 years to catch on before we were fully integrated with electricity. Think about that. Thomas Edison had his plant up and running in 1882, 1884, and like 10 years later, only 4 companies had switched to electricity because there were companies in 1890s who said, that electricity thing, man, that's a fad. I'm sticking to the steam engine. And even the companies that switched to electricity were not getting good results. Because it wasn't until those businesses, until those factories changed their model where they could take advantage of electricity that they started seeing the benefit of electricity. And I think we're in the same position right now, at the very beginning of this. To me, this is the most exciting time in education. If all we do is take technology and put it on top of our current model, our current systems, then all we're doing is making the old model faster, maybe even more efficient. What we need to do is change the model and ask ourselves, what's the right model that we need in education given the future that we face, and how do we use technology to support and enable those changes? Because the technology doesn't matter. The technology is going to continuously change and shift. This is a picture of my daughter when she was 2 with a Google Home. They had sent me one. My wife and I set this up, real easy to connect. How many of you have a Home or Alexa that you yell at in the living room? Yeah, that. You have that thing set up. We set this thing up. Okay, Google, what time is it? Okay, Google, what's the weather outside? I learned that it can play songs. Okay, Google, play a song, and it would play a song. Really cool. My daughter's watching all this, and she walks up between us. She looks at that thing, and she goes, okay, Google, play the Spider-Man song. She's really into 60s theme superhero music. No response from this device. She says it again, louder. Okay, Google, play Spider-Man song. No response. She looks up, she grabs it, she looks up at me, she goes, Bobby, Google's broken. 11 months later, it wasn't broken anymore. The engineers have advanced the technology to the point where it does recognize her voice. And now, her and her mom have battles about what kind of music we play in the living room. So I want you to think about this as I close out here. I want you to think about my 4-year-old. She's almost 4. She'll be 4 in a month. Think about my 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or someone in that age category. And I want you to think about the latest and greatest technology that we have at our fingertips, whether it's your MacBook, your Air, what's it called? MacBook Air, your Chromebook, your Surface tablet, your iPad extra large, whatever. I'm supposed to be going to Grand Canyon this summer, and I can't wait to see people walking around like this. I'm just going to kick them right off the edge. There's no railing there. Whatever that is, whether it's your iPhone 10, your iPhone 9, they didn't make a 9, right? Or 8. For me, it's a Pixel 2 XL. Anyone have one of these? The latest and greatest technology from the most innovative company in the world. I'm kidding. This is already old. I want you to think about this latest and greatest technology, this superpower computer, and think about my 4-year-old and realize that this or that thing she's holding is the worst technology she will ever see in her life. This is her Commodore 64. In 20 years, she's going to be hanging out with her younger friends, and she's going to find one of these in a 50-cent box at a thrift store. And she's going to say, oh, I have to have one of these. My dad had one of these. Because she's going to want to put on her shelf like a museum piece. The way I know some of you have old technology sitting on your shelf like museum pieces. And she's going to say to her younger friends who are hanging out, she's going to say, oh, she's going to get flashbacks. Because, you remember things 20 years later. She's like, you guys, there's the port. And her younger friends will be like, what's that for? And I'm like, all right, I swear this is true. You're going to think I'm crazy. You're not going to believe me, but there's YouTube videos about this. My dad had to plug this into the wall. And her younger friend's going to be like, what? What do you mean? Like, take it out of the box, activate the nuclear battery? And no. Every day. For hours, he had this thing plugged into the wall. And her younger friends are going to be like, oh my God, how do they live like that? Those are the kids who are coming into our school system. This is the generation that's coming into our system all the way from kindergarten through graduating college. What is the model that we need in place? What are the processes that we need to create? What are the models that we need in place so that these kids, with technology as part of their lives can learn the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that they're going to need to solve the problems that they face. That's why I hope we gather at events like this, to have those discussions. Thank you guys very much.